Before we can learn all of the cool mind tools and advanced success technology, we need to understand what we're up against. Okay, what Wyatt just talked about is the forest of what we're up against, the zoomed out view, the 40,000 foot view, looking from way back. In the next few sections, we're going to zoom in a little bit more, and we're going to come from the 40,000 foot view, maybe down to the 10,000 foot, to maybe 2,000 or 3,000 foot view. And appropriately, we're going to be using an analogy of a plane on autopilot. Because we humans move through the world very similarly to an airplane that's running on autopilot. As you probably know, most modern airplanes get from point to point with very little manual help from the pilots. Very little manual help from the pilots. Sure, the pilot grabs the wheel once in a while and moves the throttle around a little bit, but there are thousands of systems operating inside of that airplane, controlled by computers that are doing everything from taking it off and landing it to getting it where it's supposed to go to keeping it stable. And even when the pilot does take the wheel and steers the plane, the autopilot is still doing most of the flying. It's still operating most of the systems in the airplane. So we have autopilot systems that are running in 4 basic realms. Okay, 4 basic realms. We have autopilot systems that are being generated from the inside, and we have autopilot systems that are being generated and driven from the outside. We have kind of 2 autopilot systems, 2 different types. We have processes, and we have structures. What I'm going to talk about right now is I'm going to talk about processes that are on the inside. Processes that are on the inside. Who's seen the movie The Matrix? Everyone seen that movie? Good. I think that movie should be watched at least yearly and contemplated. There are great books about the movie discussing the philosophy of the Matrix, and there are movies that are made about the Matrix and the philosophy of the Matrix. There was one in the bonus package that's about the philosophy of the Matrix, which has philosophers all talking about their different perspectives on it. After watching the movie many times and really considering it, it hit me, the Matrix isn't what I thought it was. When I first saw the movie, I thought, oh, the Matrix is the world that we live in. It's this kind of cultural and sheep herd world that we're all in and we're all following along. Well, it is that, but there's another side of it. There are actually 2 matrices. One of them's on the outside, but the other one we carry around on the inside. And the one that we carry on the inside with us is our mind. And it operates using this currency that we like to call thought. Now, if you ask the average person, what is thought? The answer that they will give you will sound either, very basic, very childish, or it will sound like, I have no idea what thought is. And I like to think of thought using various analogies, and one of them is, thought is like water that's flowing through a complex plumbing system in the basement of a skyscraper. Hundreds of various pipes and mechanisms that it's flowing through. And if you're in the water, flowing through all those pipes and mechanisms, you have no idea that they are controlling your destiny. because you can't see the pipes and the mechanisms that you're flowing through. That's the matrix that we carry around inside of us. Now we're going to talk about the flow of the water. We'll talk a little bit about the pipes in this section, but we're going to talk about the pipes a little bit later on. For now, to get kind of a wedge into this, to get a handhold on it so we can pull ourselves up and to look into it, we're going to talk about the water. We're going to talk about the flow. Okay, so let's go back to using the analogy of the airplane. Okay, a modern jet airplane flying through the sky. It has a few key components that are driving it through the sky. It has a computer system, it has a navigation system, it has a map inside, but it also has some jets. Okay, it has these huge turbofans that are powering it with many, many, many thousands or tens of thousands of horsepower. It takes a lot of power, a lot of energy to keep a plane flying through the sky. Just like a shark moving through water, a plane needs to keep flying to survive. Somehow intuitively, we all know that if the plane stops in the sky, that's very bad. Okay? Something bad is happening if the plane stops in the sky. Sharks have to continually swim, many of them, to survive, because they have to keep passing the water over their gills to get oxygen. They can't stop. Okay? Our inner matrix, our inner mind process is very similar. The natural, the intuitive, the obvious direction, the obvious way things work is that I need to keep it going all the time in order to survive. It's like the jet with the huge turbofans that are powering it. The mind feels intuitively like it needs to keep going at full speed. And typically, if a person stops thinking for a moment, they get very scared. Because what does the mind show it in that moment of silence? Anyone? Everything that you're afraid of, everything you fear, everything you haven't been looking at, the mind just holds it up and says, here it is. Look over here. Right? And it looks like, you know, that picture, that really scary picture from The Exorcist with, like, you know, the demon child, right, before it's going to spit the green stuff. Right? That picture is what's waiting. And somehow we know that. Right? We know that if we stop the mind, that that's what it's going to show us. Ah! So we just don't even want to go there. Let's stop that. So the computer is computing inside of the autopilot. The navigation is navigating. The map is mapping. And the jets are jetting. It's all happening together, and it cannot be stopped. Give you a little bit of direction on this from the structural before we talk about how this manifests. We're using the three-brain model, the triune brain model, Dr. Paul MacLean's model. We're going to be using it a lot. Remember, we have a physical brain, the fight or flight brain. We have an emotional brain, the love, fear, happy, sad brain. We have the logical, reason-oriented, symbolic brain. What's interesting about the three brains is that each one is a very efficient mechanism by itself, but they're not very well connected to each other. So, in our jet that's flying on autopilot, we often feel very drawn to do different things at the same time. The physical conflicts with the emotional, conflicts with the logical. We really want to eat the McDonald's French fries, but we feel fear that if we do, they're going to hurt us. And that battle is being waged, and then our logical mind is looking over the whole situation, and it's saying, yeah, they sound good. Yeah, I don't want to die. You know what? Just one won't hurt. I'll just eat one. This is the way the human chimpanzee operates, right? This is what we're doing all the time with the jets on full thrust. So I'd like to show you a visual here while we're still kind of zoomed out. What this is the idea that the mind is being pulled magnetically in two directions at the same time. Okay, very, very strong forces. On the inside, we're being pulled at the DNA level by literally our physical structure. The DNA builds these mind mechanisms inside of us, of which we have estimates are between 100 and 1,000, depending on how you look at it. Those could be seen as the pipes that the water is flowing through. These create biases, moving away from some things and toward others, biases of judgment automatically happening. So this is on the inside. We're being pulled very strongly. On the outside, we're being pulled by culture, these giant, what are called meme plexes, very complex systems of ideas, beliefs, worldviews, all operating together. Our community, so groups of others, you might call them special interest groups, because all groups are special interest groups, and we're very, very influenced by them. And then the others, the individuals around us, our peers, authorities, people that we look up to, people that we'd like to please. Now, this is a simplistic map of this phenomenon. Okay? Really, we could take these pairs and put them on the ends of magnets, and there are many others, and we're constantly being pulled in multiple directions. The three brains are all trying to sort it out, conflicting with each other, pulling us in multiple directions. Our biases, our mind mechanisms, our DNA are pulling us from the inside. Culture, community, others are pulling us from the outside. And this, all of this information is coming into our autopilot navigation system, and it's bombarding us. It's literally inundating us. Remember Wyatt said, it's what you're doing when you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. That's the problem. But what are you doing when you're doing what you're not supposed to be doing? And who's doing it? Who's minding the store? I mean, what's going on? Have you ever woken up in the middle of doing something counterproductive, and all of a sudden the higher you shows up and says, what the hell are we doing? How did we get here? Yeah, well, a lot of this is how we got here. And you know what? 100,000 years ago, this benefited us. This equaled survival and reproduction, which was the game then. That was the game. And this worked great for that. Okay, it was awesome. So this was very efficient, very effective 100,000 years ago. Now, with the complexity, with no longer living in your tribe of 100 where you knew what was going on and you knew everyone and you could track it all, now we live in a tribe of 7 billion. Really. And it's all completely screwed up for our system. This, right? This is like flying your autopilot through the Bermuda Triangle taking a bunch of children's magnets and putting them on the little gyroscope in there and putting a bunch of viruses in the computer. Okay? And putting a crazy person at the wheel. That's the effect that this has. What I'm trying to say here, what I'm trying to communicate, is the challenge is great. Okay, the challenge is great, and it's not getting any simpler or easier. In fact, it's on what they call an increasing exponential curve. Every day, every week, every year that goes by right now, this challenge doubles, quadruples, quintuples, and it multiplies itself. My very good friend, Wyatt's friend, and a very important mentor to me, Offer Breyer, he coaches very, very, very successful people. And he says people come to him all the time and they say, Offer, can you help me? Can you help me simplify my life? Can you help me make things simpler? Anyone like to simplify their life a little bit? Who would like to simplify their life, make things simpler? Okay, good. And he says, no, I cannot. No. In fact, your life will only become more complex. Period. And there's nothing that can be done about it. Why is that? It's because every day you have new experiences and you learn new stuff, and you add that to what you already had. Do the math. It can only become more complex because you're bringing you with you. But what we can do is we can give you tools to manage the complexity. We can give you tools, simple tools to manage the complexity, so that as your life becomes more complex, it becomes more fulfilling, more enjoyable, more integrated. You can literally become far more successful using simple tools to manage the complexity. That's what this is about. So as we are processing, as we are flying our plane through the air with these turbofans, these huge jet engines going crazy, putting thrust behind us, and the computer trying to navigate for us, and the map trying to tell us where we're going, and as we try to manage that with all this incoming information, we're using or being used by, depending on how you look at it, a set of mechanisms that we call biases. Biases. These are becoming very kind of popular and well-known and talked about in cognitive science and in pop psychology. If you want a good read, go to Wikipedia and type in cognitive biases. Cognitive biases. And there are lists of hundreds of them. And what I'd like to do now is I'd like to explain to you some of the key cognitive biases so that you get a lay of the land. You understand which are most important and impactful on your life. The first set, I've learned a lot about this set from Wyatt here, is the toward and away from cognitive bias. Toward and away from. So we humans move toward the things we like and away from the things that we don't like. We're driven by greed, we're driven by fear. It turns out that we humans are about twice as motivated to move away from the things we don't want to have happen than we are to move toward the things that we want. Fear, pain, the threat of something bad happening motivates us approximately twice as much as pleasure and gain. So our needle here is biased over to one side. So as our plane is flying through the terrain, we're avoiding things twice as much as we're moving toward things. Another bias that we have that I'm actually going to call a meta bias, because this really affects a lot of biases, and it's somewhat conceptual, but it works with the toward away from bias in a very interesting way, is what I'm going to call the cause-effect projection. The cause-effect projection. I'm going to show you a diagram here that we'll use a few times in this program. This is the way that the average mind likes to see the world. One causes two. Okay, there's a link. This thing happens, and then this causes this. Now, if you really want to be bored, Wyatt and I could get into a conversation about causality, which is kind of boring, and we won't go into the depths of what philosophers have talked about. Later in the program, we'll go into a non-boring discussion about causality and a new way to look at it. But the quote-unquote reality of the situation is that this doesn't exist. Okay? Cause and effect cannot actually be perceived directly by humans. We imagine it. We make it up. And we make it up in a very particular way. We see one thing happen, and then we see another thing happen, or we see two things happen at the same time, and we say, oh, that one caused this one. Right? So our spouse comes home, and they say something, and then we get upset. And then they come home the next day, and they say something, and we get upset. And we go, aha, you are making me feel bad. You are causing me to feel bad. Anyone ever done anything like this in your life? Okay. But we can't perceive cause-effect directly. We made that up. The next thing we do is even better. We generalize. We do what Wyatt and I are calling samenessing. Seeing similarity, seeing pattern. So we say, okay, one not only caused two, but our mind makes another quantum leap and says, every time there's a one, it causes a two. So we don't just say, you made me feel bad. After two or three of them, we go, you make me feel bad. You are the reason why I feel bad. I feel bad? It's because you're here. But we do this everywhere. This is sometimes known as meaning. But out here in reality, where most of us are trying to live, there's no such thing as cause-effect. No such thing as direct cause-effect, anyway. That a more accurate way of looking at this would be multiple arrows coming from all different levels and kinds of places into this one, and then this one's arrow going out into a whole bunch of other things over here, and every one of them with literally tens, hundreds, thousands of arrows coming in, and ultimately you realize that everything's connected to everything, and the whole model falls apart. It doesn't operate this way anymore. But here's the trick. Here's the trick about cause and effect. It's an important stair step on the ladder or the staircase to taking control of your own mind. It's an important stair step. Because the stair step before this was living in an animated, magical world where things just happened, and there were forces out there that were probably trying to hurt me and get me that were making them happen. I didn't have any grasp of it. A step up, right, an evolution up, just like moving from problem and goal up to vision and challenge, a stair step up is moving to cause effect. This is what minds love to do, is see it everywhere, project it everywhere. Simple, this causes that, this causes that. The stair step after this, we'll get into it, is multiple causes, multiple effects, or cause effects. Instead of something being cause and something being effect, this is a cause effect because there are things causing it and it's affecting things, both sides. Multiple causes, multiple effects, and there are levels beyond that as well. They're mental models. It's just an idea. That's the point I'm trying to make. It's just an idea. Just a stair step, doesn't really exist. Some humans thought it up. Just an idea that can easily trap us. Don't get too attached to it. Another bias that we have is to bias toward now when it comes to gratification or avoiding pain. In other words, I'd much rather have a little bit now than a lot later. I'd much rather have a little bit of avoidance of pain or relief from pain than a lot of avoidance and relief from pain later. We bias toward instant gratification. One of the many factors in this, okay, because I want to try to not use the term causes and reasons. I want to try to not use those terms too often because they imply simplistic cause and effect, which is not the way that the world really works or the way our minds really work. But one of the factors in this is our bias toward seeing things in simple cause-effect. We can't do multiple cause-effect. We can't do complex consequential thinking because we never learned it and it's not naturally one of the pieces of wiring or programs we come with. So because we can't work out all the math of how things are going to turn out, we go, screw it, I'll just eat the fries now. It's too complex, I don't want to worry about it. Okay, so we bias toward instant gratification. Another pair of biases that work together, I've actually created these names, and they're several important cognitive biases that are generalized together, and they go like this: emotional estimation and seeing only validation. Emotional estimation and seeing only validation. Say that with me. Emotional estimation and seeing only validation. One is how we estimate, how we guess about what's going to happen, or how things work. And then the other is how we analyze what's happening or what has happened. Got it? One's looking out into the future or trying to figure out what something means. And the other is analyzing, looking at what is happening or what has happened. So emotional estimation is interesting in that it's ambiguous. It means two different things. One is I'm using my emotions to estimate, and the other is I'm estimating how something will make me feel in the future. And both of them are big problems, big mistakes that we make, big biases that we have. So the first one, emotional estimation, is we guess what we think is going to happen, and then we check our emotions to see whether or not it's actually going to happen. Right? So we guess, well, you know, is this football team going to win? And our emotions go, yeah. And we go, yeah, they're going to win. Let's bet some money. Really? Right? We think about the future, think about what we want to have happen, or what we think might happen, and we check our emotions. Right? Is someone likely to deceive me in the future? Someone that I love? We think about it, and we get a really bad feeling, and we say, ooh, I don't like that feeling. So you know what? No, they're not likely to deceive me. I don't even want to think about it. Let's just put that aside. The other side of emotional estimation is estimating how something will make us feel in the future. I'm going to go and I'm going to bet some money on this football game because I know that when I win, I'm going to feel really good and I'm going to make the guy that I bet against feel really bad. Get all hepped up and charged up. But guess what? When we get there, and even when we win and we get the money and we see the other person feel bad, the way we feel in the moment isn't the way we guessed that we would feel. When we guess what an emotional payoff is going to be, when we guess how good or how bad we're going to feel in the future, we're almost always way, way off. It turns out that even trained experts, professionals who are trained in this, are horrible at it. Even after professionally trained, they go in and they say, okay, if this happens, how's it going to make you feel? And they say, oh, I think it's going to make me feel really, really great. And then they go back and they say, did it happen? Yes. How did it make you feel? Nah, not that good. Okay? So we use our emotions to estimate the future, and we estimate the future of how we're going to feel, and we're way off. Okay? Emotional estimation. We're very biased, in other words, by our emotions. Seeing only validation. Now this is a great little bias mechanism that we have inside of our heads. And what this does is it looks around to see what's going on, and it says, I was right. Yep, I was right. Yeah, I was right. Oh, I knew that. Yeah, I was right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I already knew that. Well, yeah, but I knew that. Oh, look at that, I'm right. Oh, I was right. Oh, hey, you know what? I mean, I don't want to sound like an ass, but I knew that that was going to happen. Do you remember back when I told you that this was going to happen? You remember that? So we go through life mostly not having guessed accurately what was going to happen. But the 1 out of 10 or 1 out of 20 things that we did guess, we go, look at that, I was right. So we get enough of a little boost to feel, okay, I'm not totally wrong, but it's horse blinders. It's like having a blind spot that instead of it being one little one here and here, it's like that's what we're looking through, and the rest of it is blind spot. Seeing only validation. We see validation that we were correct, and we see validation that we're a right, good, lovable human being. You know the type of person that's always trying to show you how they're being good? They're always kind of pointing at something. You know the person that says, anytime something happens, they go, you know, I knew this was going to happen. I was going to tell you yesterday that I knew this was going to happen today. I really should have told you that I knew it. So I knew it was going to happen. And do you know that person? Anybody know that person? Yeah. All right, we see it all the time. Emotional estimation, seeing only validation. Where do these biases come from? Where do these biases come from? Most people think that they're learned. When they hear about them, they actually use the biases, they backwards rationalize, they see only validation, they construct a whole narrative and they go, oh yeah, when I was little, my parents used to beat me every time I did something they didn't like. That's why I'm twice as motivated to move away from things. And then they do some rationale logic, and they do the cause-effect thing, and they go, Everyone's parents beat them. That's how we got this. And then they walk through life and they talk to people and they go, did your parents beat you? Are you afraid to do things? Do you move away from things? And 9 out of 10 say, no. And then every 10th one, they say, yeah, my parents did beat me. And yeah, I am afraid to take action in life. And they go, see, I knew it. I knew I was right. There's the proof. Seeing how the biases interact with each other and they kind of work together? These biases, from my research and from kind of the research of a lot of different scientists, it seems that these biases are wired into the human brain-mind system. They're part of the psyche. Hardwired. Again, most people don't want to hear this or think this or look at any of the research, but it seems that most of this stuff is from birth. That sounds spooky, like, uh-oh, are you trying to tell me that I'm predestined to live in fear for the rest of my life? No. We're going to talk about how to use our minds to retune and tweak our own biases. We're going to use some powerful tools for this. And because we have a system that can be reprogrammed, and because we can change these influences around us, we can mess with the system. We have a lot of power. But it sure helps to know what we're dealing with. One quick little footnote here. Some humans are actually biased toward the move towards and not toward the move away from. We're not all 2/3, 1/3. Each of us individually has our own set of biases all tuned in various directions. Right? Now, most people hearing this would then say, oh, okay, because I knew that I was perfect. And I knew that somehow I was the one human that didn't get any screwed up biases when I was young, right? No, not exactly, right? We all got just as many that have been inefficiently tuned for living in this reality, and we each have just as much work to do. I want to give you a note here. I want to mention something to you. Life thrives at the intersection. Life thrives at the intersection. It's where all the energy is created, is at the intersection. What do I mean by this? I actually mean it literally in the physical world. Okay? Most highly evolved, diverse life lives at the intersection of the land and the water. The intersection of the continent and the ocean, or the ground and the river. It lives at the intersection. That's where the forests exist, and that's where the coral reefs exist, and that's where the edges of the seas exist, and that's where all the life is. Out in the middle of the deserts, very little life. Out in the middle of the oceans, very little life. At the intersection. It also exists at the intersection of the planet and the sky. It literally is all right at the intersection. That's where it thrives. Something's going on there where all these forces meet. Well, in our reality, we live and we thrive in the mind. That's where it all comes together for the human. That's where it all meets. Our big intersection is in the mind. And as you're hearing Wyatt and I talk about, and we'll be talking about in the next few sections, most of us are sleepwalking. We're walking around asleep, unconscious. These mechanisms are driving everything. We can't see them. We're like the water in the pipes. We've got a mechanism inside of us that re-stories the whole thing, writes a narrative of how it's all working that makes sense to us. And we have no control over it. But what's spectacular about being human is that if we learn to take the wheel, if we learn to actually take over and let some of the autopilot run, but learn to wake up and be aware of what's happening on a more continual basis, use a few simple tools, we can reach up through that whole stack. We can consciously take control of all of this power, and we can direct our lives. We can direct our success. I'm going to give you a little preview here. Just like we have multiple layers of complex, powerful forces inside of us, pulling on us, shaping the direction that we're going in, programming our autopilot computer, and just like we have multiple layers of external forces pulling on us, programming our computer, affecting our map, and all of these are pulling in so many directions, and there's so much information coming in that we're confused and we wind up average. When we start directing our own minds, literally in simple ways, like we did at the very beginning of this program, directing our own awareness, we can turn the magnets around and we can use every one of these powerful forces as our engines, as our weapons, to achieve whatever we can imagine in our visions. Just as much as they affect us, we can affect them. And just as much as they use us, we can use them. When all of these forces affect a human mind, that's important. That means a lot, so to speak. That really has a significant impact on the world. But when a mind uses all of these forces consciously and intentionally, again, that's what creates a Great Pyramid, or a Holocaust, or a nation, or a new future. Okay, look over your notes real quick. Look what you just learned. What stood out for you? Is there anything that stood out? Put a little star next to it.